A relationship with the right referral partner could be a game changer for any B2B company. So what if you could reverse engineer these relationships at a moment's notice? Start a podcast, invite potential referral partners to be guests on your show, and grow your referral network faster than ever. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the second episode of a brand new series that we've recently launched called How to Podcast. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, and I am really excited about this series. Logan kicked it off last week with episode 1, talking about why you do not need a content calendar when you have a podcast. And today I'm going to be talking about why you need to be producing multiple episodes each week. Now, I know a lot of you listening to this are thinking, how on earth am I supposed to be producing even one episode a week? Nonetheless, multiple episodes each week. 2 solutions to that. 1, build a team internally that can handle your podcast. There's a lot of moving pieces. You'll need an audio engineer. You'll need a copywriter. You'll need graphic designers. You'll need a project manager to make sure that everything gets uploaded and all the moving pieces come together smoothly, or work with an outside agency like ours and take all of that work off of your plate and put it on an outside partner. And that way you can actually see the benefits of what I'm going to be talking about in today's episode. So I'm going to be covering 3 specific reasons and benefits of having a show that has multiple episodes each week. I'll start by telling you that the 3 most successful shows that we produce in terms of downloads all coincidentally happen to be daily or almost daily shows. So I typically don't measure the success of a show based on listenership, but I know that a lot of people consider downloads to be a metric of success. I actually think that sales opportunities with your guests are a better metric of success when it comes to your podcast, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. But in terms of downloads alone, looking at that metric, our most successful shows are daily or almost daily shows, and I don't think that that is by accident. So here are the 3 specific reasons that if you're considering doing a podcast, you should consider doing multiple episodes each week. The first one is what I alluded to just a minute ago. The more guests you feature on the show, aka the more episodes you release, equals more sales opportunities. Now, we are building a category called content-based networking. We're actually going to be releasing a series within B2B Growth soon, solely dedicated to talking about content-based networking. But the idea of this concept is that you are leveraging a content medium, in this case, podcasting, to connect with individual people that you want to build relationships with. Maybe that's referral partners. Maybe it's your ideal customers. Maybe it's industry influencers. And by collaborating with them to create content with them, you're building relationships that are ultimately going to map to revenue. And so when you think about your podcast in terms of one-to-one, the individual guest that you are building a relationship with, and that guest represents a sales opportunity for you, obviously you want to be interviewing as many people as possible. It's why B2B Growth has been a daily show for as long as it has been, because if we can do, why do a weekly show and only create one sales opportunity with one guest each week when we can have 5 new sales opportunities with 5 different guests that we feature on the show each week. And so the more guests you feature on the show, when you got your targeting right and you're interviewing your ideal clients, the more sales opportunities you're bringing for your sales team, ultimately for your business. So that's the first reason you should be producing multiple episodes each week. The second one is the more guests you have, the more people that you have promoting your show. And so whenever you feature someone on your show, they essentially become an advocate for your podcast. They have a vested interest in promoting your show because they're a guest on that show. And so by equipping them with things like graphics, LinkedIn updates, different pieces of content for them to share on social, you're just creating more and more advocates of people that are sharing your show. Now, I've said in the past that you should not rely heavily on influencers to kind of blow your show out of the water. The most influential people that we've had on this podcast, people like Simon Sinek, Gary Vaynerchuk, we've had several, Noah Kagan, we've had several kind of thought leaders that have an enormous amount of influence. And those episodes are actually the least downloaded episodes in our archive. Those people are typically not going to share your content because they have their own content to share. So it doesn't make sense for them to do that. But the bulk of our guests are actually not people like Gary Vee and Simon Sinek. They are VPs of marketing at B2B tech companies, B2B service businesses. And because of that, they don't get a lot of media exposure. So them being a guest on our show actually matters a whole lot to them. And they tend to share that content more. They share it internally with their teams. They share it on LinkedIn. And with every new guest that we add to the show, every new episode that features a VP of marketing at a B2B tech company, gives us one more advocate. We're also adding one more person to the community of guests that we're building. So when I'm going out and I'm doing these B2B growth dinners, I'm meeting up with guests and listeners. Well, obviously every episode I add that's an interview-based episode, I'm adding one more person to that community, one additional person that I can connect with, and one more advocate for the show. So that's the second reason. So we've talked about how each episode represents a sales opportunity if you're doing your guest prospecting correctly. The second one being that the more guests you have, the more people you have promoting your show because those guests become advocates for their own episode and for your show as a whole. The third one that I'm going to talk about in this episode is the more content you produce, the higher the likelihood that you're going to create content that resonates with your buyers. And so you'll notice if you've been listening to this show for very long, we've, several months ago, earlier this year, I think it was March, we started doing some behind the curtains episodes on the weekend. So it was just me sharing kind of what I was learning, how I was growing in the business. And we got an enormous amount of positive feedback on those episodes. So we started supplementing our interviews with those behind the curtains episodes. We're now adding this content, this How to Podcast series. We're about to start adding a content-based networking series to this mix. We're about to actually start doubling down on the number of interviews that we're doing. We are putting more content out because we are seeing results from it. And when you put more content out and you're giving your buyers more options to consume content that is something they're interested in. And so when you're headlining your episodes, which I'm sure we'll do future episodes on the importance of headlines, but when you're headlining your episodes specifically, I believe that at least with the podcast channel, the way that Apple Podcasts delivers content, if you can get specific in your headlines and you can produce multiple episodes a week, we're even starting to go to multiple episodes a day. You're just giving more choice to the listener, and you're going to have more opportunities to engage with that listener on a more frequent basis. And I don't know about you, but I'm always looking to engage with people in a meaningful way more frequently, whether that's on LinkedIn, whether that's with this podcast, whether it's with, in-person events. We're always trying to figure out how can we engage people deeper. And the podcast medium lends itself to depth because you're captivating someone's attention, not just for the 30 seconds that they're skimming your blog post, but 10, 15, 20 minutes, however long your podcast episode is, they're spending time with you at the gym, in the car. There's a lot of depth baked in just to the natural way that people consume podcasts because they're doing it passively while they do something else. So if I can touch on a topic that resonates with one of our listeners, and maybe, only 1 in 5 episodes connect with a listener because, not everybody is interested in every topic. But if I'm putting out 3 episodes a day and every 5 episodes connects with one of our listeners, then I've just increased the likelihood of someone listening to our show once a week to once every 2 days. And so I just think there's an enormous amount of power in producing multiple episodes each week. If you are not even doing a weekly show yet, I would strongly encourage you to get in the game. We are seeing an enormous amount of growth in our business, I think, because the podcast channel is starting to be recognized as the powerhouse channel that it is in terms of depth of engagement and content-based networking, being able to feature your ideal clients as guests on your show and actually create sales opportunities without having any listeners at all, just with your guests alone really drive the ROI of your podcast in the early days while you're building that audience. So B2B brands are starting to see that. I would encourage you, if you're listening to this, start that podcast, whether you can, whether you're at a place where you can work with an agency like ours, or you can do it yourself or put together an internal team. I would strongly encourage you to get started because it is about to become very crowded waters and you want to jump into this pool before your competitors do. I mean, had we not ranked for the term B2B in iTunes, because we were an early adopter to podcasting, you would probably not be listening to this right now. I mean, we have just taken we've built an enormous listenership solely based on, being early. And so we're starting to get to that stage where podcasting is no longer early. I think we're moving to that next evolution where it's going to start becoming a requirement for brands, just like a blog has been for the last 7-8 years. I think we're moving into that phase where podcasting is becoming just another requirement. And so you want to capitalize on being early to the platform. So I hope those 3 reasons are helpful to you. I hope they don't overwhelm you. If you have any questions about any of this at all, please email me, james@sweetfishmedia.com. I'm really excited to chat with you about this. Thanks a lot for listening.
Becoming a thought leader doesn't just happen. If you want to build a strong personal brand and extend your reach online and offline, you need a plan. Want help developing yours? Check out Impact Summit. This one-day event is bringing together best-selling authors, professional athletes, influential CEOs, and emerging entrepreneurs, all for one purpose: to equip you to lead, influence, and inspire. Whether you're looking to build a lasting legacy with your business or extend the reach of your brand, Impact Summit speakers will share inspiring stories and practical lessons to help you on your way. Did we mention a session on launching and growing a podcast? You guessed it. You'll hear from Sweetfish Media's own James Carberry during that session. You won't want to miss all of these influencers and leaders coming together in Salt Lake City on October 13th. Ready to learn more? Check out influencerinc.co/Impact Summit. B2B Growth listeners can get 15% off the price of their tickets for this event by using the promo code SWEETFISH, SWEETFISH. So use that code, get your tickets today, and get ready to grow your brand and your influence at Impact Summit 2018.